I'm Stan, CTO at IABM, and I love asking people about Web3. So guess what? I've got Dave here from Three Media. So tell us about Web3.
Oh, look, Web3, it's the question is it real or is it not real? And our position really is that it's got some real value. If we think about Web3, we anticipate at some point in the future there will be a Web4 and a Web5. So we can't deny that it's a real thing, realism. And that, yeah, it's got some great value. We've done a lot of work at Three Media, sort of delving into what are the real practical applications for Web3 in the media and broadcast space. I won't say crypto, other than to say I won't talk about crypto, and it's not really about that side of stuff, but we've done some really interesting work around infrastructure opportunities around Web3, and it's sort of delivering on a lot of the promises that we see. So, about great performance, great flexibility in the systems you're using, and at a really, really good cost point.
Right. So just back up a step and just tell us a little bit about Three Media.
Well, we're a long and well-established consultancy company based out of the UK. Been in business coming on 25 years. But we're a boutique, we're niche, it's media and broadcast and all things sort of entertainment related. We don't really work in any other industries. And we're very much a technology, workflow, process, anything really around the smarts and the way that you run your business, new technology, transitional work.
So that's why you jumped into Web3.
We've jumped into Web3 because we saw some analysis, and our discussions sort of said, within the broadcast space, up to 50% of the clients that we were talking to were saying it's a load of nonsense, it's not real. And that is something clearly we couldn't ignore. And that's what typically people would come to a smart consultancy like Three Media for, to say, well, how do we get to the bottom of whether or not there's any value here? So, it's been really, really good for us. The big learning has been that some of those hurdles that people say in Web 2, in the traditional web space right now, it's either too costly or they don't like the risk profiles or security is not an issue. Web 3 at an infrastructure perspective resolves lots of those things, particularly cost, particularly the security side of stuff and risk. So we think there's a really, really great story there, but you need to think about it carefully. You need a good strategy, you need a good plan. You don't really want to set your business off on a trajectory that either denies your ability to do something smart in Web 3 or not. And our position has always been, whether you play or you don't play with Web3, you really got to understand the basis of that decision making.
You've got to understand where it goes. So let's just talk about that for a minute. People are into proof of concepts and they're in RFPs.
Yes.
And you don't seem to see the mix, so
what are you
seeing in that?
No, look, what we're seeing here is they're two very different devices, the RFP and the POC, that serve two very different types of outcomes in businesses. One isn't better or worse than the other, and there's been a little bit of dialogue where people are sort of saying, well, is the RFP out of fashion? Do we still sort of need it? And we still see that as a really important bit of discipline within a business. Great for finding out new technology. It's a great discipline around what actually are your requirements and what are your strategies and what you're trying to achieve for your business. Where we don't see it working well is when, without being dramatic, where that process has been treated a little bit disrespectfully, which is we'll go through the RFP, but we know what we really want to pick. And that's where we think it's a great waste of time for all participants. But that's the perfect scenario in many ways for the POC. You've got your 2 or 3 vendors, you're not silly, you've got a really good understanding of what you need. So why go through that earlier process? Let's just do a shootout with a really good set of the key requirements that you require. So we sort of say, the POC is the new black of television. It's a really nice, new, innovative way.
A good way to put it.
It is. And what we need really is really back in the executives and the management layers of business, whether it's the CFOs or the executive, to realise that you're not shortchanging the business, you're still being diligent.
I think where that really fits in, there's no question the industry's into partnerships now. And you have to work together closely between vendors, and you guys are in the middle and you guys put that together, which I think is good.
Yeah, we sort of see Three Media as a little bit like Switzerland.
Yeah.
And we can ask the tough questions on both sides of the ledger as such. And look, I think, Stan, you've nailed it. Tech moves so fast that you can't really be changing provider every quarter, but they do leapfrog, so you really need to pick like-minded providers.
I'm going to ask you one more question here. Let's get on to cloud. You know, people have been in the cloud, out of the cloud. Actually, some of the stats are people have moved right out of the cloud again. And then we got hybrid. What's your stance on that?
Our stance is you must have a cloud position. You can't function really without it. I think anybody that looks at a decision about whether they play in the cloud based on a cost of a server here versus the cost of a subscription for a public hosting service, I think they're doing the cloud a little bit of a disservice. It's a much more complicated decision-making process than that. We push the idea very much of cloud enabling a new operating model. So if the cloud and the decisions you're making in your cloud not being evaluated against your technology stack, all of your operations, your internal talents and the way that you're running your business, the way that you run your funding models, your customer and product line offerings, and the way that you service your customer. If you're not evaluating your cloud position on those sort of 5 main principles, you're taking too simplistic a view. We were chatting to a vendor recently who had a great business opportunity that required a huge amount of content to be moved between 2 vendors. In a traditional sense, they could never ever have met the requirements. They would have had to have passed up on the business. Now they are pretty strongly in the cloud and they're able to facilitate that in about 48 hours. That's a piece of business they couldn't have gotten. So yeah, maybe on a very simple line, it's cheaper to have done A versus B, but these guys are talking about growing their business and growing their service. So we need a good, sophisticated, mature approach to whether the cloud is worthwhile or not. And again, it's not about the cost of this one versus the cost of that one. It's just not that sort of a position.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely great. And it's been great chatting with you,
Thank
David.
you.
No question, because people can't understand every piece of technologies these days, and it's good to have people like Three Media to do that.
Thank you, Stan.